The blood on a leaner Grace Sullivan's lip had barely dried when the auctioneer shoved her onto the makeshift stage. Her hands were bound tight with a coarse rope, digging into wrists already bruised. This was Turlingua, Texas, 1876, and for a woman with no family, no money, and nowhere to go, it was the end of the line. The crowd outside the saloon was the worst kind of rowdy: miners, drifters, and ranch hands, all looking for cheap property, not a wife. "Next up, gentlemen," the auctioneer boomed, his voice echoing off the dusty street. "A fine young woman, 20 years if she's a day. Bit damaged, as you can see, but nothing that won't heal." Grace kept her eyes down. The damage he talked about, the bruises blooming on her cheekbone and around her eye, was courtesy of her landlord, who decided she was merchandise before she even hit the stage. Her late husband, Michael, left her nothing but debts, and the landlord was quick to collect. It was awful, but the worst twist: Michael's death, the one thing that should have freed her, was the very thing that delivered her to this horror show. $5, $7, $10 for the woman. The bids climbed, tightening the knot of fear in her stomach. Every dollar was a chain forged stronger. Then, a voice cut through the drunken chaos, deep, authoritative, and completely out of place. $25. The crowd actually hushed. They parted, and Grace's heart hammered a desperate rhythm against her ribs. Standing there was a tall man in a worn leather duster. His face was hidden beneath the wide brim of his hat, but she saw the silver star glinting on his vest. He was the sheriff. 30, a red-faced miner dared to challenge, swaying slightly on his feet. 50. The sheriff didn't even pause. His voice was cold, unwavering steel. $50. That was more than most men there earned in a month. The silence stretched until the auctioneer, wide-eyed and eager, slammed his gavel down. Going once, going twice. Sold to Sheriff Thorne. Sheriff Samuel Thorne stepped onto the stage. Grace flinched, instinctively bracing for the same rough treatment she'd always known. But he froze. His eyes, a sharp, striking blue, met hers for the first time. They weren't the eyes of a predator. They were the eyes of a storm-battered sailor finally seeing land. "No one will ever hurt you again," he said, his voice a low, gravelly whisper only she could hear. "That's a promise." Grace didn't believe him. Promises from men were like desert rain, a hopeful tease that quickly dried up and blew away. Yet, as he gently untied her wrists with hands that were strong but surprisingly careful, she felt a dangerous spark. Hope. "I'm buying your freedom, not you," he explained, cutting the tension like a knife. "You'll stay at Mrs. Holloway's boarding house tonight. Get rest, get cleaned up. We'll sort this out properly in the morning." The auctioneer pushed the crumpled bill of sale at him, but Sam just tossed him $50, more cash than Grace had seen in months, and didn't even look at the paper. "This ends now," Sheriff Thorne announced, his voice carrying like a rifle shot across the street. "There will be no more auctions of women in my town. Anyone who tries will answer to me. Now go home, all of you." His tone ended the argument before it started. The crowd melted away, grumbling, but none challenged the man with the star. "Can you walk?" he asked, noticing her unsteady stance. She whispered yes, even though every inch of her ached from the landlord's beating. "I'm Sheriff Samuel Thorne," he said, offering his arm for support. "But everyone just calls me Sam." "Grace Sullivan," she replied, accepting the support hesitantly. "I know who you are, Mrs. Sullivan. I knew your husband. I'm sorry for your loss." Grace said nothing. Michael Sullivan had been quick with his fists. His death was a tragedy, sure, but also a relief she could never admit aloud. The little mining town, tucked into the valley beneath the harsh Texas desert, seemed beautiful in the fading light. But under what circumstances? "Why did you do that?" she finally asked as they reached Holloway's boarding house. Sam paused on the steps, his shadow stretching long in the lamplight. Because it wasn't right. What happened to you isn't right, and I couldn't stand by and watch. So, just duty. Your job as sheriff. No, ma'am. Some things go beyond duty. His eyes flickered to the fading bruises on her face, and something dark tightened in his expression. No woman deserves to be sold like cattle, especially not one who's already suffered enough. The plot twist. His motives were personal, not professional. Before she could process that, the door swung open. A plump, gray-haired woman with kind but firm eyes filled the doorway. Samuel Thorne. I heard what happened at that disgraceful auction. Mrs. Holloway's gaze softened as it landed on Grace. Come in, dear. Let's get you cleaned up and fed. Mrs. Holloway will take good care of you, Sam assured Grace. I've paid for a week's lodging. That should give you time to decide what you want to do next. I can't repay you, Grace mumbled, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. I'm not asking you to. Sam tipped his hat. Good night, Mrs. Sullivan. I'll check on you tomorrow. As he walked away into the rapidly gathering darkness, Grace watched his retreating figure. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to breathe and feel that terrifying, glorious thing. Hope. The boarding house was a clean, modest haven, a jarring contrast to the cramped filth she shared with Michael. Mrs. Holloway led her to a small, tidy room. I'll draw you a hot bath, the older woman said, lighting the oil lamp. And I'll bring up stew after you've washed. You look like you haven't had a proper meal in weeks. Grace sat gingerly on the bed, overwhelmed by the simple, unexpected kindness. Why are you helping me? Mrs. Holloway paused. Sam Thorne doesn't waste his time on lost causes, dear. If he brought you here, you're worth helping. She studied Grace's face. Those bruises. Your husband, he's dead, Grace replied flatly. I know that, dear. I'm asking if he's the one who hurt you before. Grace looked away, ashamed. Sometimes. These are from my landlord. Mrs. Holloway's lips compressed into a hard line. Men like that are why I never remarried. But Sam's different. He's one of the good ones. This was the first breadcrumb of Sam's true character. Left alone, Grace forced herself to look in the mirror. The woman staring back was unrecognizable. Gaunt, hair tangled, bruises stark against pale skin. But the eyes were the worst. Dull, lifeless, like a cornered animal that had finally surrendered. When had she stopped believing she deserved better? The hot bath was the first true luxury she'd known in years. Lavender oil in the water, steam rising to clear the grime, the shame, and the memories. She scrubbed hard, wishing she could erase the past. Later, wrapped in a borrowed nightgown, she sat by the window, eating the best stew she'd ever tasted. The night was clear, stars scattered like diamonds. She could just see the faint glow of the lamp in the sheriff's office across town. Sheriff Samuel Thorne, the man who bought her freedom for $50 and a promise. She was safe, fed, clean. For now, it was enough. Morning dawned with a rush, the golden light almost painful. The memories flooded back. The auction, Sam, Mrs. Holloway's kindness. Downstairs, the boarding house dining room was full of curious stares. Conversation stopped when she entered. Mrs. Holloway appeared with biscuits. Good morning, Mrs. Sullivan. Come sit. You need a proper breakfast. Grace kept her eyes down, but the other boarders, minors, and the schoolteacher politely resumed their talk, including her without pressing for details. Afterward, Grace insisted on helping with the dishes. I need to earn my keep, she pleaded with Mrs. Holloway. Sheriff's already paid for your room and board, dear. Please, Grace insisted. I need to do something. I can't just sit. She needed to feel like a person with value, not a possession waiting for the next owner. Mrs. Holloway's eyes softened with understanding. Very well. You can help me in the kitchen. The work was simple, familiar, and soothing. What will you do now? Mrs. Holloway asked eventually. I don't know. I have nowhere to go. No family, no money. You could stay in Turlingua. It's growing. There might be opportunities. The first twist in her freedom. A knock at the kitchen door interrupted them. Mrs. Holloway opened it to reveal Sheriff Thorne, hat in hand. Morning, Mrs. Holloway. I've come to check on Mrs. Sullivan, if that's all right. Grace turned, dish towel still in hand. In the daylight, Sam was younger than she thought, maybe 30, with weathered skin, that strong jaw, and the stunning blue eyes she remembered. He was clean-shaven, his dark hair cut short. Mrs. Sullivan, he nodded. How are you feeling today? Better, thank you, she replied, heart fluttering nervously. I'm grateful for your help, Sheriff. Sam, please. He seemed almost shy, a hint of discomfort at odds with the powerful man from the night before. I was hoping we might talk about your situation. Mrs. Holloway shooed them onto the porch. The Texas sun was already blazing. They settled into rocking chairs facing the dusty main street. I've dealt with your former landlord, Sam began, no preamble needed. He won't be bothering you again. Grace's hands tightened in her lap. What does that mean? It means I reminded him that assault is a crime in Texas, rent owed or not. He's lucky I didn't lock him up. Sam's voice was calm, but the edge of steel was back. He's agreed to forgive any debt you supposedly owed. Twist number 2. Sam is a lawman, but he practices vigilante justice for her. Thank you, Grace whispered, the word feeling utterly inadequate. You don't need to thank me. It's my job to uphold the law, and what he did to you was against it. Sam leaned forward. Mrs. Sullivan. Grace, she interrupted. Please call me Grace. Grace, I need to ask what your plans are now. She felt adrift, like that leaf on the wind. I don't have any plans or options. You have more than you realize, Sam countered. Turlingua is growing. There's work here if you want to stay. What kind of work? I can cook, clean, mend clothes. That's about all. Those are useful skills. Mrs. Holloway needs help. The hotel needs a housekeeper. The general store is looking for help too. He paused. If none of that suits you, I can arrange passage to El Paso or San Antonio. Bigger cities, more opportunities. The temptation of escape. Grace studied him, trying to find the angle, the motive. Why are you doing all this? You don't know me. Sam was quiet for a long moment, the tension building. I knew your husband, he finally said. Not well, but enough. I knew he drank too much. I knew about the fights. I should have done more, but he always had an excuse for his bruises, and you never filed a complaint. Shame flushed her cheeks. I know that now, he said gently, and I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. The twist on his initial regret. This was guilt, deep and personal. This town, this territory, it's hard on everyone, but especially on women. The law doesn't always protect you. But while I'm sheriff, I aim to change that. His steady gaze made her believe him despite everything. She looked away first, the intensity of his conviction too much to bear. I'd like to stay in Turlingua, she decided. At least for now. If there's work to be had, I'm willing to do it. She chooses agency over escape. Good. I'll speak to Tom Wilson at the general store today. In the meantime, you're welcome to stay here. I can't keep accepting charity, Sheriff. Sam, he corrected. And it's not charity. Consider it an advance on your wages. You can pay me back when you're on your feet. Grace recognized the stubborn set of his jaw. He wouldn't budge. Very well, but I will pay you back every cent." A small smile touched his mouth. "I don't doubt it for a moment, Mrs. Sullivan." "Grace." He stood. "I'll let you know what Wilson says. Try to rest." As he stepped off the porch, Grace called out, "Sheriff Sam." He turned back. "Thank you, not just for the money or the room, but for seeing me when no one else did." Something warm and bright flickered in his blue eyes. He tipped his hat and was gone, striding purposefully toward the general store. Grace remained on the porch, rocking gently, finally allowing herself to imagine a future not defined by fear. The future was coming fast. The next few days settled into a routine she found surprisingly comforting. Mornings were spent helping Mrs. Holloway. Afternoons, she worked at Wilson's general store, a job Sam secured for her. Tom Wilson was gruff but fair, and his wife, Martha, took Grace under her wing immediately. The store was the town's heartbeat: supplies, gossip, and a brief escape from the brutal Texas heat. Grace, working behind the counter, learned more about Turlingua in 3 days than she had in 6 months as Michael's wife. It was growing, prosperous from the silver mines, but plagued by the usual troubles: saloons, gambling, and desperate men. Twist number 3. The town's savior is a mystery. She learned Sheriff Samuel Thorne was the town's true transformer. He arrived 2 years ago and single-handedly cleaned up the lawless outpost. He was respected, feared, and the subject of much speculation among the unmarried women. "He's never shown interest in any lady here," Martha confided as they stocked shelves. "Some say he left a sweetheart back east. Others think he's married to his badge." Grace felt a curious flutter at the information, telling herself it didn't matter. Her marriage to Michael cured her of all romantic notions. Yet every time Sam visited the store, which was frequent, her awareness spiked. He was always polite, never presumptuous, but those blue eyes followed her in a way that made her both nervous and oddly pleased. By the end of the first week, she had saved enough money to buy a second dress, a hairbrush, and soap. Small things, but they represented a profound, exhilarating independence. "You don't need to rush paying me back," Sam told her outside the church one Sunday morning when she pressed $3 into his hand. "I keep my promises," Grace replied firmly. The corner of his mouth twitched up. "I'm beginning to see that." At the church service that morning, Grace felt the curious glances of the townsfolk. Her bruises were fading, but she still felt marked. Reverend Collins preached about redemption and new beginnings, words that felt directed straight at her. She watched Sam sitting a few pews ahead. Was he seeking redemption too, or just doing his duty as the town's leading citizen? After the service, a group of women, wives of miners and merchants, approached her. "We're having a quilting circle on Tuesday at my home," said Abigail Carter, the doctor's wife. "You'd be welcome to join us." Grace was overwhelmed by the sheer, simple normalcy of the invitation. "Thank you, I'd like that." Across the churchyard, Sam was watching. When their eyes met, he gave her a slight, satisfied nod, approving her integration into life. That evening, as Grace enjoyed the cooler air on the boarding house porch, Sam appeared carrying a covered basket. He was here again. "Evening, Grace. Mind if I join you?" "Not at all." He held up the basket. "Mrs. Holloway sent some apple pie. Said you'd been working too hard to bake." Grace smiled, unlocking her door. "That was kind of her. Would you like to come in? I can make coffee." It wasn't their first time alone in her tiny cabin, but Grace felt a strange new nervousness as he ducked through the doorway. The small space seemed even smaller, with his tall frame filling it. "The festival starts tomorrow," he said, setting the pie on the table. "I was hoping you might accompany me to the dance." Grace paused mid-measure of coffee grounds. "Martha just asked me the same thing." And what did you tell her? That I'm not much for dancing, Grace admitted, turning to face him. Sam took a step closer, his blue eyes searching hers in the lamplight. Is that the real reason, or are you afraid? His directness stunned her. Afraid of what? Of living, Grace. Of feeling something again. Of letting yourself be happy. Grace looked away, the intensity of his gaze a physical heat. Maybe I don't deserve to be happy. Why would you say that? Genuine confusion was in his voice. Because I stayed with him, she whispered, the shameful truth finally escaping. Because I was too weak to leave. Understanding, and something darker, dawned on Sam's face. You think you deserved what Michael did to you? It wasn't a question, but a painful statement. Grace said nothing. The air hung thick with the unspoken. Grace, Sam moved closer, stopping just short of touching her. You were not weak. You were surviving. There's a difference. I could have left. Gone where? Done what? A woman alone in this territory? He shook his head, gentle but firm. You did what you had to do, but you're not alone anymore. The simple statement shattered her resistance. Years of held-back tears spilled down her cheeks. Sam's arms came around her, gentle yet secure, offering pure comfort. I'm so tired of being afraid, she whispered against his shirt. His hand stroked her hair softly. Then stop. Choose to trust again. Choose to live. Grace pulled back, looking up at him through her tears. Is it that simple? No, he answered honestly. It's probably the hardest thing you'll ever do, but I think you're brave enough to try. The faith in his eyes was almost unbearable. Grace reached up, her fingers lightly brushing his strong cheek. Sam went utterly still, his eyes locked on hers. I'll go to the dance with you, she said softly. The smile that transformed his face was like a Texas sunrise breaking over the mountains. I was hoping you'd say that. The first emotional peak was sealed. The night of the harvest dance arrived clear and cool, a full moon rising over the Chisos Mountains. Grace stood before her mirror, barely recognizing the woman in the new blue dress Martha insisted she buy. Her auburn hair was curled softly. There was color in her cheeks that owed nothing to cosmetics. A knock. When she opened the door, the look on Sam's face made her heart skip a beat. You look beautiful, he said simply. She took in his black suit and crisp white shirt. You clean up rather well yourself, Sheriff. He offered his arm. Shall we? The town square was transformed. Lanterns glowed, a band played a waltz, and couples filled the dance floor. Sam's solid presence beside her gave her confidence. He introduced her to people, his hand resting gently and possessively at the small of her back. Would you like to dance? He asked as the band started a slower tune. She hesitated only a moment. Yes. He led her onto the floor. I should warn you, I'm not very practiced at this. Neither am I, Grace admitted. Then we'll learn together. And they did. After a few awkward starts, they found their rhythm, moving as if they'd danced together for years. Grace relaxed, simply enjoying the simple, shared joy. Everyone's watching us, she murmured as they turned. Sam's eyes never left hers. Let them watch. I'm only looking at you. The second emotional peak was building fast, the evening blurred. Dancing, laughter, community acceptance. As the crowd thinned, Sam led her away from the dance floor, toward the edge of town, where the desert stretched out under the brilliant moonlight. Are you tired? I can walk you home. Not yet, Grace replied. It's beautiful out here. They stood in comfortable silence, the faint music drifting to them on the night breeze. I need to tell you something, Grace, Sam said, his voice serious. Something I should have told you before. Grace turned to him, a sudden spike of anxiety hitting her chest. What is it? The night of the auction. He took a deep, steadying breath. It wasn't coincidence that I was there. I'd been watching your situation since Michael died. Twist number 4. Sam wasn't a random hero. He was a secret guardian. I knew your landlord was pressuring you, threatening you. I should have intervened sooner, but I was trying to find a legal way to help without making you feel obligated to me. Grace processed the information slowly. He had been watching over her. Even then. I failed you that night, Sam admitted, his expression troubled. I should have stopped things before they got so far, before he hurt you. You saved me, Grace corrected, when no one else would. I should have done more, he insisted. When I saw those bruises, saw you standing there like you expected nothing but more pain. His jaw tightened. I wanted to kill him. The raw, almost savage emotion in his voice was a revelation. Sam, I've never felt that way before, he continued, the words rushing out. I faced outlaws, drunken cowboys, even a band of Comanche once. Never felt anything but calm. But seeing you that night changed something in me. He took her hands in his grip firm. I think I started falling in love with you right then, Grace Sullivan. And every day since has only made me more certain. Grace stared at him, her heart pounding a breathless rhythm. No man had ever spoken to her with such honest vulnerability. The emotional cliffhanger was here. You don't have to say anything now, Sam added quickly. I know this is sudden, and given what you've been through. Grace silenced him by placing her fingers gently against his lips. It's not sudden. Not really. She took a steadying breath. I've been fighting my feelings for you almost since the day we met. Fighting because I was afraid. Afraid of being hurt again. Afraid of being wrong about you. And now, Sam's voice was barely a whisper. Now, I'm still afraid, she admitted. Twist number 5. The fear remains. But I'm more afraid of never knowing what it's like to be truly loved, to truly love in return. Sam's hand came up to cup her cheek. I would never hurt you, Grace. Never. I believe you, she whispered, and realized with surprise that she truly did. When Sam lowered his head to kiss her, Grace met him halfway. His lips were gentle, asking, offering, a conversation. It was nothing like the harsh, possessive kisses Michael had forced on her. This was a promise. This was a beginning. When they finally parted, Sam rested his forehead against hers. I love you, Grace Sullivan. The words, simple and honest, broke the last of her resistance. I love you too, Samuel Thorne. The walk back to her cabin was punctuated by stops, talking, touching, kissing under the bright Texas stars. At her door, Sam took both her hands. I should let you rest, he said, reluctant. Will I see you tomorrow? Wild horses couldn't keep me away. He kissed her once more, tenderly. Sweet dreams, Grace. She watched him go, the book, Pride and Prejudice, the thoughtful gift he'd sent for, clutched to her chest. She looked forward to the morning, to the future, to all the possibilities. Summer gave way to fall, and Grace's life settled into a rhythm that would have been unimaginable just months ago. She was promoted at Wilson's General Store to keeping the books, complete with a small raise. She moved into a tiny, clean, one-room cabin behind the store, her first real home. Her friendship with Sam deepened into something profound. Sunday dinners, long evening talks on her small porch. He never pushed for more than she was ready to give, his patient respect slowly healing the wounds Michael left on her heart. Turlingua prepared for its annual harvest festival. You should come to the dance tomorrow night, Martha Wilson teased as they closed the store. The sheriff's been practicing his two-step, you know. Grace felt her cheeks warm. Sam and I are just friends, Martha. Martha patted her arm. And my Tom just happens to check the ledgers every night when you're working late. The whole town can see it, dear. The way he looks at you when you're not watching." Grace couldn't deny the truth. She deeply loved Sam, but the prospect of allowing herself to be vulnerable again, to love again, was a terrifying mountain to climb. That evening, Sam was at her cabin. After sharing Mrs. Holloway's apple pie, Grace finally gathered the courage to talk. She shared her deep fear of marriage, of losing her independence, of becoming a possession again. Sam listened, open and serious. "Grace, I would never ask you to give up the life you've built," he said firmly, taking her hands. "Your independence, your work, that's part of who you are, part of why I love you." Twist number 6. He redefined the relationship contract. "If we married, we would be partners, equals. I don't want a wife who exists only to serve me. I want you exactly as you are." "But what if I am like him?" she whispered, the doubt raw. "You have every right to that caution, Grace. Every right to take all the time you need." He smiled, raising her hand to his lips. "When I propose, and I will propose, make no mistake about that. I want you to say yes because you're ready, not because you think it's expected." Relief washed over her. She kissed him with all the love she was finally brave enough to feel. Christmas Eve arrived with a rare dusting of snow, transforming Turlingua into a winter wonderland. After the church service and community celebration, Sam led her away from the noisy town hall, their breath clouding in the frigid air. "I have something for you," Sam said suddenly, stopping beneath a cottonwood tree. He reached into his coat and withdrew a small silver-wrapped package. "But we agreed to exchange gifts tomorrow." "This isn't your Christmas gift," he said, his eyes sparkling mischievously. "Open it." With trembling fingers, Grace unwrapped the package. Inside was a small wooden box, intricately carved. Her heart began to race wildly. She knew what this was. She lifted the lid. Nestled on velvet was a diamond ring, surrounded by sapphires that caught the starlight. "Sam," she breathed, unable to say more. He took the box, removed the ring, and knelt in the snow before her. "Grace Sullivan, I've loved you from the moment I saw you, even when you were too wounded to see it." Twist number 7. The proposal in the snow. "I promised you that no one would ever hurt you again, and I intend to keep that promise for the rest of our lives." His voice grew husky with emotion. "Will you marry me?" Grace looked down at this good, honorable man, the man who showed her what love truly meant, and felt the very last of her deep-seated fear melt away. "Yes," she whispered, tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. "Yes, I will marry you, Samuel Thorne." He slid the ring onto her finger, then rose to gather her in his arms. Their kiss was deep, tender, and full of the promise of everything to come. "Merry Christmas, future Mrs. Thorne," Sam murmured when they finally parted. "Merry Christmas, my love." They were married on a perfect spring day in April 1877. The town turned out completely, filling the church. Grace wore a gown of ivory satin, tailored in San Antonio, adorned with lace from Martha and the quilting circle. Sam waited at the altar, his face a mix of awe and unshakable love as she walked down the aisle. She spoke her vows clearly: to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poor, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part. Sam's voice was equally firm as he repeated the words. When Reverend Collins announced them husband and wife, Sam's kiss was gentle but thorough, drawing cheers and applause. Grace felt like she might float away with happiness. The celebration was the biggest Turlingua had ever seen. Dancing went late into the night. Finally, Sam leaned close to whisper in Grace's ear, "Ready to escape, Mrs. Thorne?" Grace smiled at the new name. "More than ready, Sheriff Thorne." They slipped away into a buggy Sam had decorated with ribbons and flowers. He drove them out of town, following a winding road into the hills. "Where are we going?" Grace asked, her curiosity bubbling. "It's a surprise, part of your wedding gift." After 30 minutes, Sam turned onto a narrow track that led to a small, hidden valley. Moonlight illuminated a cabin nestled among cottonwoods, a stream running nearby. "What is this place?" she asked as Sam helped her down. "Ours," he answered simply. "Twist number 8. He didn't just buy a house, he bought them a future sanctuary. I bought it 3 months ago. It needs work, but I thought it could be a retreat for us, somewhere to escape when town life becomes too much." The cabin was simple, clean. 2 rooms, a stone fireplace, and a bed covered with a quilt Grace recognized. The quilting circle was in on the surprise. "I love it," she said sincerely. "All of it." Sam moved closer, taking her in his arms. "And I love you, Mrs. Thorne." "Show me," she whispered. Sam's eyes darkened with desire. He began to unpin her hair, his fingers tracing her cheek. "You are so beautiful." Grace had been nervous, Michael's abusive memory a shadow. But as Sam slowly, reverently undressed her, his touch conveying worship and giving, not harsh possession and taking, her fears dissolved. This was nothing like before. This was love in its purest, most giving form. They lay entwined beneath the quilt, moonlight streaming through the window. "Are you happy?" Sam asked, his voice a low rumble. "More than I ever thought possible." "Even though you had to give up your independence," he teased gently. "I haven't given up anything," Grace corrected him. "I've gained a partner. There's a difference. A wise woman once told me that." She yawned, nesting closer to his warmth. "She sounds impressive." "She is," Sam agreed, his arms tightening around her. "The most impressive woman I've ever known." Grace drifted toward sleep, safe in her husband's embrace. She had gone from a woman sold on an auction block to a woman cherished and respected. The bruises were long gone, but the healing of her spirit was the greater miracle. "No one will ever hurt you again," Sam had promised. By keeping it, he taught her to live, to love, and to trust once more. The years passed. William, their sturdy son with his father's blue eyes, arrived in early summer, 1878. Twist number 9. The line of the Thorpes begins. The wonder on Sam's face when Grace revealed the news, placing his hand on her still flat stomach, was a sight she would remember all her days. "We're going to have a baby." "I never thought I could be this happy, Grace. You've given me everything." "We've given each other everything," she corrected. Sam became protective, hovering, much to the town's amusement. He nearly arrested a cowboy for smoking too close to her, afraid the tobacco smoke would harm the baby. He read every medical book he could find. Grace, however, felt a surge of gratitude for the community that had embraced her so completely. Mrs. Holloway knitting baby clothes, Martha and the quilting circle making a special blanket. They were her family now. As her pregnancy progressed, she thought often of her own mother, who died young. "I wish she could have met you," Grace told Sam. "My mother would have loved you." "She always told me I deserved to be loved," Grace said softly. "I didn't believe her for a long time, not until you." "She was right," Sam murmured. "And our child will know that too, that they are loved, valued, cherished." In June, on a night when the moon was full, Grace woke to the first pains of labor. "Sam," she whispered, touching his shoulder. "It's time." The next 12 hours were intense, but Sam never left her side. "You're the strongest person I know," he told her as the labor peaked. "You can do this, Grace. I'm right here with you." When their son finally entered the world with a lusty cry, Sam placed the swaddled infant in her arms, his own face wet with tears of pure joy. "He's perfect," Grace whispered. "Look what we made, Sam." "We'll call him William," she decided. "William Samuel Thorne, after my father and his." Later, Sam sat on the edge of the bed, stroking her hair. "Thank you. For William. For you. For this life we have together." "You kept your promise, Sam," she said, taking his hand to her lips. "No one has hurt me since that night. Instead, you've given me nothing but joy." Sam rose to cradle the tiny baby against his broad chest, his tenderness making Grace's heart swell. "Hello, William. Welcome to the world, son. Your mama and I have been waiting for you." Grace watched them, her husband and son silhouetted against the moonlight. From auctioned woman to beloved wife and mother, the journey had been long, but she wouldn't change a moment of it. The years flew by. Elizabeth Rose joined the family 3 years later. Turlingua grew too. The railroad arrived. Sam remained the sheriff, his reputation for fairness spreading across the county. Grace continued working at the general store, keeping the books, and started a small lending library in a corner. Reading had been her escape. Now it was her gift to the community. The cabin in the hills became a place of regular retreat. They added rooms as the family grew, but the original 2 remained unchanged, a testament to their beginnings. In 1886, their 3rd child, Thomas Michael Thorne, arrived during a blinding snowstorm. The pregnancy was harder, requiring bed rest. Sam hovered, terrified of losing her. "I can't lose you, Grace." "You won't," she insisted, placing his hand on her rounded belly. "We're stronger than you think, this little one and I." As Grace recovered, Sam watched her with a wonder that hadn't faded in their nearly 10 years of marriage. "I was thinking about the night we met," he told her one evening, "about how close I came to losing you before I ever really knew you." Twist, Verber 10, the secret shame of the hero. "I almost didn't go to that auction," Sam admitted. "I knew it was happening, but I tried to help you legally and hit nothing but walls." Grace shifted the baby on her shoulder. "You never told me that part." "Because I'm not proud of how long it took me to act," Sam confessed, kneeling by her chair. "If I'd been braver, faster, you might have been spared that public humiliation." Grace touched his face, turning it up to meet her gaze. "Or we might never have met at all. Everything that happened led us here, Sam, to this life, these children, this love. I wouldn't change any of it." Sam turned his head to kiss her palm. "Neither would I." Their children grew up. William studied law. Elizabeth became a teacher. Thomas dreamed of ranching. In 1896, on their 20th wedding anniversary, Sam presented Grace with a deed to a new building on Turlingua's main street. "What's this?" she asked, confused. "Your library," Sam answered, his smile widening. Twist, Spur 11. Her passion became her legacy. A proper one, not just a corner in Wilson's store. The town council approved the funding last month. "But I didn't ask for this." "You didn't have to. Everyone could see how much good your little lending library was doing." He looked her in the eye. "The Turlingua Public Library needs a proper librarian, Mrs. Thorne. The council hoped you might accept the position." Tears filled Grace's eyes. At 50, with silver-streaked hair, she felt as young and full of possibility as she had on her wedding day. Yes, of course, I'll accept." The library opened that fall. Grace filled the shelves, creating a special section for women's education and advancement, progressive texts that raised eyebrows, but Sam supported her wholeheartedly. Twist, Juror 12. The auctioned woman becomes a quiet revolutionary. "Your mother is a revolutionary," he'd tell their children with pride. Grace would laugh. "Hardly. Just someone who believes everyone deserves knowledge and choices." But privately, she took immense satisfaction in the changes she witnessed. Young women, now choosing education and independence, options unthinkable in her youth. When Sam retired as sheriff at 65, they had more time to travel and enjoy their growing brood of grandchildren. "You ever regret it?" Grace asked him one evening as they sat on the porch of their cabin, watching the Texas sunset. She was 70 now, silver-haired, her hands gnarled with arthritis, but still strong. "Regret what?" Sam asked, his blue eyes as clear as ever. "Bidding on me that night, taking on a broken woman with nothing to offer." Sam turned to her, his expression utterly incredulous. "Grace Sullivan Thorne. After 50 years, how can you ask me such a thing?" She smiled, reaching for his hand. "Just checking." He brought her fingers to his lips. "You were never broken, my love. Wounded, yes. Afraid, certainly, but never broken." His eyes held hers, still making her heart quicken after all these years. "And you had everything to offer. Courage, intelligence, a capacity for love that continues to astound me." Grace leaned her head against his shoulder, content. The scared young woman auctioned half a century ago seemed like someone from another life. Sam had kept his promise. Through all the ordinary trials and triumphs of a shared life, he had never hurt her. More than protection, he had given her partnership, respect, and the freedom to become fully herself. True love, he had taught her, doesn't diminish. It expands. It doesn't confine. It liberates. "I love you, Samuel Thorne," she said softly. "Today and always." "And I love you, Grace," he replied, his arm tightening around her shoulders. "Today and always." In that perfect moment, as night fell gently over the land they built together, Grace knew with absolute certainty that their dark beginning had earned the happiest of endings. If you enjoyed this story of a dark past leading to a hopeful future, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more real-life narratives.